Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So this week's video, we're going to be building the Limbert table lamp. We have both a single post version and a dual post version. So we'll be going through that this week. I originally had put together these off of plans I got a long time ago, like 2022 was the original plans, and somewhere along the line, the detail of the arc here in the base from the original got lost, and it was turned into just this 30-degree angle here. So the option was to remake them all so that they were accurate to what the original was. So that's what we did. We got rid of that. There it goes. And redid the entire lights with the proper base for them to be reproduction lights. So, like I said, we have the single base here, and then we have the dual post. I'm sorry, single post and a dual post. So, these are all together. They're all stained, ready to go. The video we cover putting the bases together, routing this arc in the bottom, making the jig and routing the arc in the bottom, getting them all together, getting them stained. So, let's get into the shop and get going on them. Again, let me know if you have any questions. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you at the end. So the first thing we're doing here is cutting the bases. They're going to be put into a jig to cut the pattern into them. The concave, quarter circle, whatever you want to call it, but there's a curved section there on the legs, and we don't want to put those into the jig and try and take off too much material because the pattern bit could grab the material. So there's a line that you can kind of see drawn on these. We'll see it a little later when we're at the router table, but I put these in the jig, used a pencil to mark the line, so then I just stick them here into this jig, and that way we can cut off a large majority of the material. And with a compound cut, it's the easiest way to do it. So you can see the jig there, it's 33.5 degrees. So the easiest way to do it is put it in that jig, because the saw doesn't really go to 60 degrees is the opposite side of that. It'd be 56.5 or whatever, and the saw doesn't go that far. So if you make a jig like that, you can do that. So here you see the pencil line where I marked, cut right to the top and bottom of that. So I made a jig here, cut the jig on the CNC to get those arcs that we need. Got the toggle clamps on top so we can put the piece in, clamp it down, and then using the pattern bit there can route the pattern into the feed at the bottom of the lamps. So like I was saying, that jig earlier, when you have a complex or acute angle that your chop saw won't cut, you can make a jig like that. Set the angle on one of the pieces, and then when you cut the piece, your saw is set at 90 degrees, and it's a real safe, easy cut. So you're making sure the bit's the right height, and then we're going to come in and we're going to start making those cuts. So, like I said, after cutting it on the chop saw, there's not a lot of material left to take out. So it's a pretty easy, safe cut because you're not trying to hog out a ton of material and you're not bogging down the bit. And then the piece is a little too wide for the router bit to get it all in one pass. So it leaves about a ½ inch there at the top, which is real easy to come back and take out. Then we flip it around to the other side, and we're going to knock out that side. Little adjustment here. You could feel that it wasn't quite right at the edge of the jig. So fix that, run it back through again, and get our concave surface there on the foot. There we go. Going to go ahead and pull that out. Again, clean up just that little section of it. There's a bottom bit a bottom bearing on there that's riding against the surface of the piece, and then cutting it. So there you can see, got those nice curves that we want. Dressed up real nice, real simple. The bottom there you see, those parts were done on the CNC. The part for the lap joint was cut out on the CNC, and then the little half or quarter circles were done with a Cove box bit on the CNC. So here's for the double post lamp. Bring that piece in, and it's the same process. We're gonna run it through, get our concave surface, cut into the end of the foot, take it out of the jig, get the last little part of it, then flip it and do the same thing to the other side. So when you've got complex stuff to do like this, router table and jigs like this are the safest way to do it. With these pieces, like I said, the top and bottom I cut on the CNC, but then these, to try and set them up on the CNC, I guess I could set up some kind of jig that these would go into for the repeatability of that, but much easier with this jig here. Just put it in, clamp it down, run it through the router table, and you get your profiles cut into the pieces. So again, this one's the long one, long foot for the double post lamp. So this has two cross pieces that go across it, which you'll see coming up here in a minute. And again, just clean up that little section that we didn't get. And there you have it. You can see in the bottom there, the two spots for the lap joint for the 2 feet that will go across there. And then these are the posts. So we need a hole going through the middle of the post that's going to allow the electrical cord to run. So got the drill press set up, got a long bit in it. I drill it through the one side, it goes about halfway through, and then flip the piece and get the other from the other direction. So I've got a square set up there that's going to keep my post upright. It's clamped to the little back fence. Run my bit in, I'm going to flip the piece and drill it from the other side, and then we'll have our hole that the all thread rod will go through. Now over here we have these pieces, these little tapered pieces that go on for decoration. They've got tabs on them from where they were cut out of the CNC, so I'm just using a flush trim bit here to trim off those tabs and make sure that the pieces that have to go together are nice and flat. So that's all we're doing here, just cleaning the pieces up and making sure there's no tabs on them. It's easier to do it this way than to sand 4 tabs off all sides of these. So these pieces here are for the tops of the lamps. The all thread pops up through the top of here, the cord comes up through, and then there's going to be the socket for the light bulb up in this top portion. So these get angles cut on all 4 sides of them. So we have just the square ones here for the single post, as well as we're going to have the rectangular ones for the dual post as well. So a real simple cut, just set up the blade angle. The nice thing about the saw stop is it has a left tilting blade, so the blade tilts away from the fence, so nothing gets pinched or caught in the blade. So here we are, this is the rectangular one that will do the dual post or the 2-post light. And again, just hold it up against the fence, run it through. Real easy. Gets the angle cut on all four sides, then that just has to be cleaned up when it's sanded. Pretty simple process. So you can see there, you can see the top, that little pocket area there. So now we're back over to the router table, and I'm putting an 1/8 inch round over on everything. So these are those same pieces that we were taking the tabs off of. So here all we're doing is putting an 1/8 inch round over on everything so that everything has a nice broken edge. Like I said before, the Greene Greene furniture that you'll always see, you'll never see a sharp corner on any of it. All of it's rounded over. Has that look that hands have rubbed over it and it's been worn. So everything gets a round over. A lot of times the original stuff, you can tell that that was all done hand sanding. If you go to the Gamble house and see some of the stuff there, you can tell that a lot of it was all hand sanded and aged or sanded to have that round over used look to it. So that it looked like it had already been around for 100 years, even when it was first built, as beautiful as the stuff was. So here's the center posts that we were drilling on the drill press a few minutes ago. So same thing, just getting the round over on the four corners of that. And now we're going to start putting together our bases. So we get some glue on there, put together our lap joint, turn it over here, press it tight, and I'm just going to take the staple gun here and from the bottom put a couple staples in it to hold it in place while the glue dries. That way I don't have 24 things here that I'm having to clamp up. So 18 gauge narrow crown staples, get them in there, holds it nice and tight without having to clamp everything up and wait for it to dry. So here's the dual post. So again, just getting some staples in there, getting it all snug and tight. And there's the dual base. So here's where the rubber meets the road. We're going to start assembling. So these are the pieces that have the little taper to them that we were taking the tabs off at the router table. So these will get glued up on the four sides of the posts. So that's what I'm doing here, is putting some glue on those. Got a 23 gauge pin nailer here, and we're just going to pin nail those in place. So using the little woodpecker's delve square there to make sure that the bottom is flush. A couple of little pin nails, line that up, a couple more pin nails, and then we're just going to rotate this thing around and get them on all four sides. So here's the second one, and then we just work our way around. So here we're going to get it straight and get the third one on. The dual post lights will have 3 tapered pieces on each of the posts. So you're just making sure everything's lining up, grabbing another piece, strip of glue on it, and then we'll get this one pinned. Again, make sure our bottom's flush so that when it goes on to the base, everything's flush and lined up. and cinches down nice and tight. And then we go ahead and pin those. Now we're going to do the second post. Pretty much the same process as the first. We're just going to put our tapered pieces on all three sides. So again, get it on here, pin everything in place, get everything ready to go. See me feeling there with my fingers. Again, like I've said, I think in another video, you can feel about 5/1000ths of an inch. So when you run your hand over a surface or your fingers over a surface, you can tell if it's flush or not. And if it's within 5/1000ths of an inch, no one's ever going to be able to see that or be able to tell. So we're getting our second one. Now we'll get back and get our third. Then we'll be ready to assemble this. So use our square, line up the bottom, make sure it's centered in the post, and get it pinned. Couple pins in the top, couple in the center. And there we go. And it's time to put a light together. So here we go. You can see we've got our two posts there. I'm grabbing the threaded rod that's going to run up through the center of those posts that we drilled the holes for. As opposed to having to try and put these together and put them in clamps, which would be kind of awkward. These threaded rods will go all the way through. We'll put the lamp together and then tighten the nuts down on those, and it's going to pull everything nice and tight to ensure that it stays clamped up. And I notice I forgot the glue, so get the glue on the bottom there and get our post on. And there's the first one. Now we'll do the same thing with the second one. Get it slid over. Got a spacer there that's the same width as the little arched piece that goes between them. So I put that little spacer down in the bottom so that we make sure that our spacing at the bottom and the top are the same. Just going to go ahead and clamp that and make sure that it's snugged up while I get the top portion done. Move that around and get it centered on the base, because you want those tapered pieces to be centered on the feet that go down to make contact with the tabletop. So then once we get those lined up where we want them, just put some pins in to keep them set. That way they won't move around, and we can pull the clamp off it and get the clamp out of the way. So now we take our top, put our top over, made sure it fit nice and snug and everything lined up. Now we'll get a little glue on these tops That way when we put that cap on it, in time it's going to dry and be all good to go. So there's our little arch piece that's going to be in the center at the top there. So that's going to keep our distance for us while we put the cap on. We'll glue on there. Now this is an 18 gauge brad nailer. So what I'm doing here is nailing the top down into those posts so that the posts don't move. Then I can push that threaded rod up and tighten it down. I just put one nail in there. That gives me the ability to kind of twist the top to make sure that everything stays nice and tight. But with that nailed, now I can take this, turn it upside down if I need to tap those threaded rods through. So making sure that everything's good there. Centering our center little arch piece there. You can see the arch, and then just a couple 18 gauge brads to hold that in place while the glue dries. That way there's just real small nail heads that are easy to fill with putty or wax. I went over and grabbed a little ratchet, tap that threaded rod through, and we're going to put on the washers and the nuts. So you can see them poking up there through the top. Drop on a little lock washer on each of them. And we're going to take our nuts and put our nuts on, and we'll tighten those down. And then that's going to snug everything together and basically act as a clamp to pull everything tight together. So, got the ratchet, we're snugging that up. It's pulling everything nice and tight and secure. And again, this way we don't have to have stuff in clamps and have, wait for half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour to let the glue initially set up. So there we go. We've got our first dual post together. So now we'll do a single post, and it's pretty much the same process, only on the single post it gets the tapered pieces on all four sides of the post. So that's what you'll see here. We'll be putting together this one and putting the tapered pieces on all four sides of the post. So again, just like the first one, we're just going to pin this together, pin it on all four sides till we get the four of them together. So now, as you can see, we've got all four on. Just making sure that hole is centered in the bottom. We've got all four of our tapered pieces on, and we're gonna put this single post together. So same thing, grab the threaded rod, run the threaded rod up through the middle, little glue on the bottom of the base. Run that down on there. Get it all centered. And pin it like we have the other ones on the dual base. So all pinned, that's not going to go anywhere. Push our rod up through the top, get our cap. Again, a little bit of glue on the cap. put that down over it. Get our lock washer and our nut, and we will have another one put together. So again, we want to make sure that that cap is square to the base. You don't want it being cockeyed and turned to the side. So same thing, just going to put some brads here in the top. Keeps it temporarily in place where I want it. Still has a little movement to it, but nothing another brad can't fix. There we go, nice and snug, squared up, and we'll put on our washer and our nut. Take our ratchet, tighten that up so that it's giving that clamping action that we're looking for. And there we have it, the single post. Just checking it out to make sure everything's good. And there we have it. And now we are on to the finishing process. So these are being colored with an oil. It's Livos, it's a natural oil. The color is Cocobolo on this white oak. It gives a real nice brown color to it, very much in line with the arts and crafts movement. So all we're doing here is getting everything stained up and finished. So using just a little acid glue brush there. I didn't have any chip paint brushes, so just using a little acid brush there to get down into the corners and all the nooks and crannies. Sometimes, unless you put a ton of stain on a rag, it's hard to get into those tight corners. So to start off, I just use a little brush like this, go around it, get all the tight corners first, and then come back and use the rag. Alright, so now once we've used the brush and done all that, now I'm going to get out the rag and we'll get the majority of the color on the whole fixture. And we can save ourselves from having to load it up too much and have stain drip all over the place as we try and squeeze it into the corners. So we'll get this on and we'll just work it around. Alright, so as you can see there, real pretty color on it. Just finishing everything up, making sure that we've got everything covered. Then we'll grab a clean rag and get it all dried off. Here up inside the that little pocket in the top. Gonna get that all done, cleaned up. All right, so we got a clean dry rag here. Gonna use this, start wiping the stain down. Get all the excess stain off of there and get it all wiped down and cleaned up. Or the oil, I should say. So using 2 rags here, one on each hand, one to hold it with. That way, if you have oil or stain on your gloves, you're not transferring it back onto the piece. So here you'll see I'll get the majority of all the stain off, and then I'm going to use the air hose there and blow the piece off. You're always going to get stain down in nooks and crannies and cracks, and if you use the air, you can blow all that extra stain out and then wipe it down, and then you avoid the problem of setting a piece aside and coming back later and looking at it and realize there was some stain in one of the crevices that leaked out, and now it's dried on there and you've got to try and sand it off or get it cleaned off without it being noticeable. So at this point, if you just use some compressed air and blow it out, you're going to be in a much better place. So that's what I did there. I blew it all off, and now I'm just going to go through and wipe off all of that stain that blew out when I cleaned it up. And that's all there is to that. Hey everyone, so I hope you liked the video. Hope that you followed along and enjoyed watching the process of putting these together. They're a little more straightforward and simple than some of the chandeliers and stuff we do, but there's still a lot of different type of detail work and using jigs at the router table. Getting these, making sure that you mark them first, cut off some material so that you don't have too much material that you're trying to route. You don't want the router table or the router bit to grab all that material. So you want to shade away as much material. So that's what we did at the beginning there with the little jig that we made over at the chop saw and cutting those down. Some of the other stuff is cut on the CNC, but I've also done it at the router table with the jig, clamping down the pieces. So a lot of different ways you can do that. The first sets of all of these I did strictly at the router table with jigs. There was no CNC to any of it. The CNC just makes it easier. I just made 12 of these and 12 of the single post. So doing that many, having the CNC to be able to group cut out and batch cut out parts makes it a lot less time consuming than it already is. Doing 12 of each of these takes a lot of time, so having the CNC to kind of batch some of that stuff out saves some time, cuts a couple steps out of having to cut all the pieces, then cut them on the bandsaw to get most of the material away, then take them to the router table with the jig and cut them down. With the CNC, you can just program it in and it's going to cut these out for me the way I want. So that made all of that a lot easier. Same thing with the base. Put in 1.5 inch material in there. It does, with a core box bit, it does this detail at the bottom. Then I can flip it over. It'll cut my mortises out for these pieces to lock together. So it makes all of that a lot easier. So hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you get notified when we have new videos coming out. The next one will be coming out this next week. And we've got it, you can kind of see the table behind me here. So the Ford table that we've been working on, the top's done, the inlays are in. I've got the ebony splines and plugs in the top. I've just got to do the ebony plugs for the base, and then final coats of finish on it. So that'll be the next one as we finish that up and get that out the door. And then we got some cabinetry and stuff coming up too. So stick around, keep following us. We appreciate it. Like I said before, your time's valuable, and we appreciate that you spend it with us. Have a good week.